The Mulek Park Elementary School in Grand Rapids, Michigan has students from pre-kindergarten through 5th grade. That means that all of the children there were born after the state made a big decision that would impact their education. That decision was to end a decades-long reliance on property taxes as the primary way to fund schools.
Local property owners really felt as though the property tax burden was so high that they couldn't afford to bear it any longer. That led to really sort of shift in state, from local to state funding, and a shift in funding from the property tax to the sales and a collection of income and other taxes.
The so-called tax swap in Michigan went into effect in 1994. Up until then, it was homeowners who shouldered the burden of funding their local schools. It's the system still used in Illinois. And like Illinois, Michigan's old funding formula resulted in big disparities from one school district to another.
The property tax created huge inequities. Communities that had a very high taxable value would have to have a very low increase, and they could raise the amount of money needed, whereas poorer communities would have to tax themselves up their ears in order to raise any amount of money at all.
The effect of Proposal A, as the tax swap was called, was almost instantaneous. Homeowners got the tax relief they wanted, and the gap between the richest and poorest school districts started to close.
In small rural districts where they had very low property tax values, suddenly those districts are receiving more money than they may have ever anticipated. And so those students are receiving a better education than they may have some time ago. Certainly they have more resources.
5, 6.
But under the new system, Michigan allocates money on a per-pupil basis, meaning schools get about $7,000 for each student. Before Proposal A, Grand Rapids schools were in the middle range when it came to funding. After Proposal A, they still are. While Michigan's funding system has improved things for the poorer districts in the state, it hasn't entirely leveled the playing field. For example, schools here in Grand Rapids receive a little over $7,100 per student. But only 3 blocks away in the more affluent East Grand Rapids neighborhood, students there receive $5,000 more apiece.
We still have some school districts that are making about twice what other districts make. They grandfathered in some of the inherent unfairness based on wealth of communities before the change. And they did it for political reasons, because if you had that much money, why would you voluntarily go down?
For Grand Rapids, a declining enrollment has meant a loss of tens of millions of state dollars in recent years. Schools have had to make cuts in excess of $60 million.
Over the past 6 or 7 years, we've had to increase class size. We've had to reduce services. We have made every attempt possible to cut just as far away from the classroom as we can. So we've cut central office positions. We've cut support service positions, custodial operations. We have privatized our transportation purely in an attempt to save resources to direct towards the classroom.
Critics of the current funding formula say that relying on sales and income taxes is fine when the economy is strong, but when it isn't, the volatility of the system becomes evident.
We've actually had years where they have prorated what they told us they were going to give us, where they've gone back and said, that money that we said you could have, we'd like it back now. And it looks like this year they're going to do it again. They're just talking about the balance of the state aid account and how projections have not been where they thought they were going to be, and we may be prorated $120 per child for this school year's funds.
Before the tax swap, state funds accounted for about 20% of a school district's budget. That's now been flipped, and Michigan provides 80% of school funds. Because of that, school districts have less control than they did and are more accountable to officials in Lansing.
Our legislature, our state elected officials, feel that they are the ones who are financing the school, so they should have the ability to make more decisions in regard to accountability or virtually any area of our governance.
But despite its drawbacks, many in Michigan still feel that Proposal A is better than what was in place.
I don't have a magic solution. I think that it needs to be fixed. Is the answer to go back to the old system? No, I don't believe so, because there were many inequities built into that as well. But I do believe that what we have now needs to be adjusted.
It's not a perfect system, but I would argue it's far better than where we were 12 years ago, when we had senior citizens forced to sell their homes because they could no longer pay the property tax, when you had businesses moving out of the state because the property tax burden was overwhelming, and more importantly, when we had school districts around the state in those poorer areas, in urban or rural poor areas, that were closing their doors early in the school year because they flat were out of money.
1, 2, for Chicago Tonight, I'm Eddie Arruza.